At the first step leading to the boarding tunnel of the Boeing 777 bound for London, a poised black woman in a slate-gray business suit adjusted the strap on her shoulder bag and stepped lightly in her heels. Her name was Kendra Holloway, and this was no ordinary trip. She was en route to a pivotal international legal summit and event that would mark a milestone in her flourishing career as a federal prosecutor. But just as she prepared to scan her boarding pass, two airport police officers cut through the crowd with urgency. One was tall and stocky, his ruddy face offset by a bushy mustache. The other, thinner and wiry, had sharp, darting eyes that made Kendra uneasy. "Stop right there. You," the taller officer barked. Passengers around them paused. A ripple of confusion spread as conversations died down. Kendra turned, startled. "Excuse me?" she asked, her voice calm but alert. "Hands up," the thin one ordered, already reaching for the cuffs on his belt. "Wait, why?" she asked, more confused than afraid. The name badge on the tall one read Officer Morgan, and the other was Officer Kent. "You are under arrest on suspicion of terrorism," Morgan said loudly, as if trying to make a spectacle out of it. "Do not resist." "Terrorism," Kendra echoed, disbelief warping her features. "That's insane, an attorney." "Shut it," Morgan snapped. "You can explain yourself later." Without another word, they forced her arms behind her back and clamped the cold steel cuffs tight around her wrists. The metallic click echoed sharply in the suddenly hushed gate area. Hundreds of eyes were on her, some curious, some concerned, others suspicious. Morgan grabbed her arm roughly, guiding her back through the gate area against the flow of boarding passengers. She stumbled slightly in her heels, her dignity unraveling with each step. The humiliation was palpable. She caught the whispers. What did she do? Look serious. Was she really going to get on a plane? No one knew, and no one questioned the assumption that a black woman in a tailored suit might be dangerous. Kendra swallowed her fury and forced herself to walk with composure, despite the shame blazing in her chest. "I have a right to know why I'm being detained," she said as firmly as she could. "Quiet," Kent muttered with a sneer. "You'll be told what we want you to know." "You people always pull this card," Morgan added, with a cold smirk. "Rights? People like you don't get to demand anything." Those words sliced through her. People like you. She wasn't sure what shocked her more, the casual racism or how normalized it seemed in his mouth. They walked her through corridor after corridor, turning heads everywhere. Finally, they reached a sterile hallway with gray metal walls and no windows. They stopped at a steel door, opened it, and shoved her inside. It was a cold, bleak room with nothing but a table, 3 chairs, and fluorescent lights that buzzed faintly overhead. Morgan slammed the door behind them. The lock clicked shut. Kendra was now truly alone with them. Morgan dropped into a chair and put his boots up on the table. Kent stood by the wall, arms folded, eyes scanning her every move like a predator. "Name," Morgan demanded. "You already know my name," Kendra replied, her voice tense. "It's on my boarding pass." "Let's see it," Kent said, motioning toward her purse, which had been tossed onto the table. Kendra used her cuffed hands to retrieve her wallet and pulled out her passport and driver's license. Morgan snatched them up, gave him a lazy glance, and chuckled. Kendra Holloway, 33 years old. Rings a bell, but probably nothing. Clearly, they hadn't recognized who she was. Or worse, they didn't care. They began asking questions vague, accusatory, and invasive. "Where were you last week? Have you been in contact with any foreign nationals? Why are you traveling alone to London? What's really going on?" Kendra responded calmly. She explained she was attending a legal summit, mentioned her professional credentials, and answered each question with clarity and poise. But the interrogation didn't seem aimed at getting the truth. It felt like a performance for power. Finally, she asked, "Am I being charged with anything specific?" Morgan leaned back in his chair and chuckled. "Not yet," he said. "But once your name hits the watch list, it sticks. Terrorist suspicion can ruin Career 7 if it's just a mistake." "Right, Kent." Kent stepped closer and added, "Once the FBI and Homeland Security get your file, it's a mess. Your job, your reputation toast. Then came the pitch. But Morgan continued, voice suddenly more casual, we can help you out. Make it disappear. Call it an expedited clearance. Kendra's expression darkened. $5,000, Kent said flatly. Cash. Now. In return, Morgan added, we file a report saying you checked out fine. You're free to go. Make your flight. No red flags. Easy. She stared at them in disbelief. The audacity, the cruelty, the corruption. They thought they were squeezing a helpless woman into compliance. What they didn't know was that they were digging their own graves. Kendra said nothing. She mentally cataloged every word, every smirk, every insult. She noted their names, their badge numbers, the time on the clock, 3:42 p.m., April 15th, 2025. Time's ticking, Morgan said. Clock's not going to wait. Kendra lifted her chin and locked eyes with both of them. Her tone was icy. Before I decide whether to accept your generous offer, she said slowly, please state your full names and badge numbers one more time for clarity. Morgan rolled his eyes. Fine. Officer Brian Morgan, badge 4321. He's Officer Jacob Kent, badge 2976. Atlanta Airport Police. Satisfied? Very, Kendra said. Then, with precision, she stepped back and pulled a small leather case from the inner pocket of her blazer. Inside was her Department of Justice ID. She laid it on the table. My name is Kendra Holloway, she said, her voice ringing clear. I'm an assistant United States attorney for the Northern District of Georgia. That means I have full federal authority to investigate and prosecute crimes committed within this jurisdiction, including this airport. She paused, then added, your actions, false arrest, racial profiling, and attempted extortion are all felonies under federal law. The color drained from Morgan's face. Can look like he'd been punched. Both froze, the weight of realization crashing down on them. You're lying, Morgan said, but his voice lacked conviction. Kendra said nothing. She pointed at her badge. Morgan leaned forward, squinting. The seal was real. The ID was real. The nightmare they thought they were creating for her had just turned on them. Kendra didn't stop. You are both now under investigation. You will not touch your radios, weapons, or cell phones. Doing so may be considered destruction of evidence. She pointed at her bag. Officer Kent, kindly place my phone on the table. Slowly, he obeyed, pale and shaking. Kendra took the phone, dialed swiftly, and made 3 calls to her supervising federal prosecutor, the head of airport security, and a senior FBI liaison. The reaction was fast. Within 10 minutes, the door burst open. A swarm of law enforcement officials entered, uniformed officers, federal agents, and a senior airport commander. They scanned the room. Then, without hesitation, the commander said, uncuff her. Now, Kendra's wrists were freed immediately. The same hands that had cuffed her were trembling now. Officers Morgan and Kent, the commander said coldly, surrender your weapons, radios, and badges. You are relieved of duty, effective immediately, pending a federal investigation. Morgan tried to stammer a protest. Sir, this was just a... Silence, the commander snapped. You have disgraced this badge. Can look like you might faint. Kendra turned to them one last time. You humiliated me, lied to me, tried to extort me. That's not a misunderstanding. That's a crime, and you will face the consequences. As they were escorted out, heads hung low, the investigators turned to Kendra. She laid out everything timeline, words spoken, behaviors observed. She gave names, badge numbers, and the extortion demand word for word. Her testimony was precise and powerful. Footage from gate cameras showed the arrest. Patrol logs showed no formal report of a suspected terrorist. No intelligence alerts. No warrant. Personnel files revealed prior complaints against both officers swept under the rug. But this time, they had picked the wrong woman. Within weeks, Morgan and Kim were fired. Then came the indictment's federal charges for extortion under color of law, conspiracy, and deprivation of civil rights. Their trial was held in downtown Atlanta. Kendra testified not as a prosecutor, but as a citizen. She told the court, calmly and clearly, exactly what had happened. The jury took less than 4 hours to deliberate. Guilty on all counts. At sentencing, the judge's voice thundered in the chamber. You betrayed the law you swore to uphold. Your racism, corruption, and cowardice end here. Each officer received 7 years in federal prison. For Kendra Holloway, the journey didn't end in that courtroom. She took time off to heal. But when she returned stronger. Her mission became clearer. She led initiatives against civil rights violations. She became a voice for those wrongly accused, targeted, or mistreated. Her story was shared across legal circles and civil rights organizations not because she wanted fame, but because truth deserved daylight. Policies at the Atlanta airport changed. New accountability measures were introduced. Bias training became mandatory. Cameras were installed in detainment rooms. Complaint channels were rebuilt. Because of one woman, one voice, one refusal to stay silent. Kendra Holloway never asked for the spotlight, but she earned it by refusing to surrender her dignity, her rights, or her purpose. Because in a system often shadowed by silence, her voice was the justice it feared and the justice it so desperately needed.